So, good evening. Ooh, let me move that. That a little better? You're good? Good. All right. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clayton Rockcliffe. I'm the president for the Brooks Medicine Hat CA for the Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta. And thanks to each and every one of you for coming out and hearing what we have to say tonight. Whether you are a member or you decide to buy a membership on your way out, if you decide you like what we have to say. And we do have membership books, and donations are always greatly appreciated. So what got me to this point? I know I certainly don't look like what you'd expect to be standing in front of a podium at a political event. 2019, long story short, we had saw two Jays elected this year. Justin Trudeau, who seems hell-bent to finish Pierre's work on destroying the West. And we had Jason, who toured the province in a shiny blue Dodge Ram and a big old cowboy hat, and sure made a lot of promises to fight and improve things for us. And judging by the people sitting here, didn't really pan out that way, did it? So, getting tired of the promises. We see it from Aaron O'Toole, anybody running, they come out to Alberta, oh, we're going to change this, we're going to change that. Take our votes for granted. It's not going to change. We have to change it. Yeah, and again, not this group, this board that is going to run a candidate in 2023 is not cut from the same cloth what you're getting from the UCP. Certainly not what you're going to get from Rachel Notley and the NDP. It's a great mix. Blue collar, white collar, people that are generations long in this province. Others like myself, I moved here fresh out of high school from British Columbia for a better opportunity. You know, I stand before you, no political science degree, no law degree, just a set of morals and values that seem to be disappearing pretty quick these days. And I think once they're gone, it's a little harder to claw them back. So it makes me think, what's the future of Alberta going to look like for my children and someday grandchildren? And that's what really concerns me. It's kind of our time to have the fight now. They're not going to have the chance. I truly believe they will not have the chance. It's on us now. And I'm just not willing to find out what happens if we don't force the change now, like right now. So I say it's time for Alberta. It's time for Alberta to put itself first. I've had enough of the recycle politics. I hope everyone else in this room can agree with that. Not just the recycle politics, but the emotional votes. We saw that happen when Notley got into power. We were so angry with the way things were gone. Something's got to be better, and boy, were we wrong voting with our emotions. So again, it's time to put Alberta first, and this is the only party that clearly states for Alberta, Alberta first, and that's what we aim to do. That's pretty much it for me, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll hand the podium over to Mr. Rick Strankman. Thank you so much for coming down and sharing the mic with us, and absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Clayton, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You don't need to hear too much from me tonight. I'm just on my way through to see an old friend of mine who has a health issue. He was the founder, actually, of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Mr. Kevin Avram, and he was the guy that hired our present premier in 1993-94 to be his advocate for the taxpayers of Alberta. And at that time, our premier chastised the present premier, Ralph Klein, for the high wages and their pension plans that they got at that time, and they removed all that. For those of you that think that guys like Paul and I, who were at one time MLAs, get lavish pensions, it's not true, and that is a result of our present premier. Maybe with the way things appear to be going, he will see to reverse that. I don't know. I just wanted to quickly say that I have some material at the back there, and I have some copies of a booklet that I received from a friend in Texas, and it's called the Cato Institute, and it talks about it gives copies of the American Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, which was written some 245 years ago. I have copies here, ladies and gentlemen, of the preamble, modernly written, a guy by the name of Roger Pillion, who is also involved in the Cato Institute. But what that does, and what it does here, it talks about the mindset of those who were at the forefront of the American forming of America as we know it now, previous to the founding of the Constitution and through tea in the harbor, if you will, in some very many locations. And it talks about the idea of what their idea was in writing the Constitution that they have now. In 1776 was the Declaration of Independence, and then they moved on from there. The Wild Rose Independence Party, as you see and hear and know of it now, is in its early, very fledgling stages, and whether the elected leader, Mr. Hinman, is one of those guys who could be perceived to be throwing tea in the harbor for a new part of Canada is yet to be seen, and that responsibility lies with you. My frustration going forward in the political arena is, and the media to some extent, the broad media, not the local media like the lady that we have here, but the broad media tends to want to be leader-centric. It's all about Rachel Notley or the Premier or whoever the leader is, and I've always never taken a stance of that, even though I followed almost the precipice of the floor crossing, not crossing the floor, with Danielle Smith. Eventually, they all think that it's about them. And they forget that it isn't about them. It's about you. It's about Albertans. And I've talked to... Thank you. I was once introduced as the everyday hero, and I took that to heart. I don't want to present as a leader in any fashion. I just want to farm over there at Altario. I see one of my neighbor farmers here, Mr. Slorstad here, fortunate enough to have irrigation. You're welcome. I don't. But I was going to drive through your cornfield on the way down here today, but didn't get a chance. No, ladies and gentlemen, we all, and many of the people in Albertans, we talked about this at supper, and it's so pleasurable to follow Clayton, an immigrant, if you will, to Alberta. And he said it, you heard it, ladies and gentlemen, he came here for better opportunities. Jason Kenney, born and raised in Saskatchewan, here for better opportunities. My friend in the home there in Maisonette, Kevin Avram, an Albertan, here for better reasons. There are many people of all sorts of skin colors, all sorts of denominations, all sorts of religions. They're here for better opportunities. They're not here to be dictated to by a single leader. And that's my frustration going forward. We've seen that. Paul well knows about that. Paul was sat on the leader's arm through the Wild Rose cycle. I don't want to tell too many stories out of school. I'll let Paul do that because I'd be perceived to be putting words in his mouth. But Paul understands democracy. And it's very basic, it's very simple, it can be. But everybody wants to devolve into I, me, and my. Well, to that, and I know we're going somewhat public here, to that I'll just say BS. And it's up to Albertans to step forward and take charge, take control. I've written about it, I've preached ad nauseum. So with that, I have some copies of this document at the back. I also have some T-shirts that I'm, through a friend, we wrote and they're to give away as well. There's no cost to any of this. It's just for information purposes. The teachers say Alberta, not Canada's ATM. And so for those of you who feel like wearing something like that to send a message, that's great. I will now move on and introduce my friend Todd Beasley. Todd I've met on and off over the years through political activism, and Todd has been active in a professional nature with carbon sequestration. He has many patents. He's well versed in it. Some of it goes way beyond the old farmer's head here, and he's well versed in this. He's actually presented, I believe, at Standing Committee in Ottawa with some of your inventions. So he too has some interesting insights going forward. Todd is well vested in the Wild Rose 2.0 in Brooks Medicine Hat here. So I'll leave it at that. I'll be around for the whole evening. Anybody who would like to venture and learn more about the intricacies of and the mindset of Americans prior to when they first called themselves Americans is welcome to visit with me. So with that, I'll leave it up to you, Todd, to introduce our guests. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. It's my honor to share the stage with these gentlemen here tonight, Rick. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you driving up from your homestead to visit with us here in Brooks Medicine Hat. We've got the new leader of the Wild Rose Independence Party here that's going to be able to speak tonight and tell us about some of the values of the party and some of the things that he hopes to achieve. And Clayton, your words, they came from the heart. And I tell you, I don't think there's anything that anybody that's seriously looking at leadership in this province could ask for more, is to mean what you say and ultimately to say what you mean. We've had enough of carpetbaggers, we've had enough of BS artists, we've had enough of people that have come into our communities and promised the moon and had no intentions of ever following through on those promises. I'm looking at you, Jason Kenney. So again, I want to welcome you tonight to the Brooks Medicine Hat Wild Rose sponsored event. I also speak from the heart, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to start off by saying this. I believe fundamentally that we have a solemn obligation to leave a better world for those that come next. My political memories go back to 1968, 1969. You can see I'm gray and I'm old and I'm round, and at the end of the day, I have had enough of a dysfunctional confederation where our votes in the West do not matter, have never mattered, and are likely to never matter unless we're prepared to do something about it. I've had enough of the Trudeaus of the world, but I've got to say this. It doesn't matter whether it was Pierre Trudeau or Jean Chrétien or Justin Trudeau. The fact of the matter, if it wasn't those three, it would be just another three with the same policies that are oppressive to our way of life in this part of the world. They are over 3,500 kilometers from where we live. Our values are not the same, and they continually re-emphasize that every time they bring in legislation that's oppressive to our society. Ladies and gentlemen, I say this without reservation. Our supposed brothers and sisters in Canadian Confederation have declared war on our society, our way of life, and our economic potentials. I'm not sure whether you paid attention to some of the particularly odious legislation that the Justin Trudeau Liberal government has come in, and understand this. It's not Justin Trudeau, it's the fact that his supporters vote for this. So it's the people in Ontario and Quebec and Liberal supporters that are supporting Justin Trudeau. He's a symptom, but the fact of the matter is he has broad support in what they're doing to us. Bill C-48 and C-49, the Tanker Act, which specifically oppressed Alberta's oil and Saskatchewan's oil exports on the West Coast. Not Saudi Arabian oil, not Venezuelan oil, not Mexican oil, Alberta and Saskatchewan oil. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't read the news today and seen the latest odious proposed legislation that trial balloons are being floated, and if you haven't seen this, and if this doesn't make you a separatist, I don't know what will. Justin Trudeau is floating trial balloons for a new act called, quote unquote, the Just Transition Act. This is as of today, and what that means is it means a creeping nationalization of our oil and gas industry. And right now, if that goes forward, we're done. We will never have the ability to change anything in our society, not only on behalf of ourselves, but on behalf of our families, and quite frankly, those that come next. He made it clear in the run-up to the last election that he is against us, that he will work against our oil and gas industries, and you know what he's done? He's kept his promise. So we have to say to ourselves, on behalf of us, on behalf of those that come next, are we prepared to accept this, or are we prepared to do something about it? Ladies and gentlemen, if Alberta was an independent nation, we would instantly become one of the wealthiest per capita jurisdictions on the planet. We are an energy superpower on par with Saudi Arabia. There's no denying that. The only reason we aren't full steam ahead in our economy as a federal government is because we have opposition to our way of life, and primarily because right now, we can't do a damn thing about it. Your vote doesn't matter. It's never mattered. It will never matter unless we're prepared to do something different, not what we've always done. I firmly believe that a vote for the Conservative Party of Canada is a wasted vote, as it always has been. That at the end of the day, we need to send a message. Now, the only way that we're going to do this with credibility, remember this, all we have to do is achieve 51%. I'm delighted that Mr. Hinman is here tonight, because what he's going to do is he's going to articulate a vision in terms of putting winning conditions in place, the systems and procedures that are necessary in order for us to have a vote on separation. We would put in the income tax capability, our ability to collect our own taxes, and our ability to go ahead and spend them as we see fit, as our society sees fit. Policing, defense, pension, societal investment, all of these things that are necessary for a society that we want to build. Now, I believe we only need 50 plus 1%, thanks to Quebec and the Clarity Act. I believe that we will, in fact, with those systems and procedures put in place, we will, in fact, win that referendum. I also believe that with Alberta's leadership, we most certainly won't be the only jurisdiction that's going to seek independence. With Alberta's leadership, Saskatchewan will follow. With Saskatchewan following the North, the Arctic, the territories, they will also come along, because they are not interested in creeping socialism, which the East is interested in. We're hard-charging entrepreneurs out here. The best thing that we can say to a government is, get out of our way. Let us make money, let us provide for our families, stay out of our way, and that's what we want. That is not what the East wants. The East wants socialism, and they continually vote for that when it's all said and done. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that in those systems and procedures we're going to have to ask ourselves is, what about our currency? Well, I believe that the answer to many of our challenges, with proper investigation, with proper analysis by those who are skilled in that art, if we simply adopted the US dollar. Now, I'm not talking about political union. I'm not interested in becoming the 51st state, and in fact, I would work so hard against that, because we have the resources to stand on our own. But I am talking about the potential of economic union. If we were to adopt the US dollar, the largest, most powerful nation on the earth would instantly be our new best friend. If we were to control the sale of our hydrocarbon and our export resources, and if we were to conclude those transactions in US dollars, that would in fact be the most important thing that we've ever done. And I want you to think about that when you leave here tonight. I got to speak about the Brooks Medicine Hat Riding Association for a second. I could speak about independence and why it's so important for us to consider this, why we have a very limited amount of time, that we either do this or that ship will sail and we'll never have that opportunity again. But it comes down to this. We are committed in Brooks Medicine Hat to win and to put an MLA into the legislature that supports Wild Rose values, that will do what they say and say what they mean, and by golly, they will fight. Thank you. We're committed to raising the capital to fight a campaign. We know that Kenny's going to come into this community, and I'm looking forward to it, because I'll be one of those guys in the audience, and I will be calling him out for the carpetbagger that he's proven himself to be, for the yet again, just another say anything politician who had no intentions of following through with his promises. At the end of the day, what we're committed to do is to visit every community in our riding. We're in Patricia tomorrow night. We're in Medicine Hat down on the 27th. That's going to be a fairly major event. We're going to be in Bazzano, Rosemary, Dutchess, Scandia, Rainier, Red Cliff, Rolling Hills, and Hilda. What we want you to do tonight after you listen to Mr. Hinman is we'd like you, if you like what you hear, buy a membership, support this party, support this riding. Support this in every community across the province. We need to build momentum. We need to reach 2 million plus voters in this province who understand that we have a strategic problem. And again, the clock is ticking. This new Just Transition Act that Trudeau is floating in the run-up to the next election, and it looks like we're going to have an election fairly shortly. If he wins the majority, he will think that he in fact has a mandate to do this. Ladies and gentlemen, we will not have an oil and gas industry controlled by Edmonton anymore. It will be controlled by the likes of Justin Trudeau. It will be controlled out of Quebec and Ontario, and it will be the end of Alberta. That's not acceptable to me. Ladies and gentlemen, we must think and we must act strategically. We must ask ourselves, are we prepared to continually accept what we've always accepted? There will be many in our society, and I can hear it now, oh, we love Canada. Oh, we can't split up. We can't do these things. You know what I call that? I call it a fairy tale notion of what they think Canada is relative to what Canada actually is. Since Confederation, Ontario and Quebec, it has been rigged that they have the control of this country. The West, when we were brought into Confederation, what we were is largely uninhabited. And Canada was set up for the benefit of those two provinces and those population bases. Well, that's no longer the case. At the end of the day, when you leave here tonight, think about this, talk about this. If you support it, talk amongst those who would go, oh, we can't do this about Canada or this or that, and have them realize the reality of where we're at today and where we're likely to leave for our children and grandchildren if we don't fight and if we don't fight now. So with that, it is my absolute honor to be able to introduce the newly elected leader of the Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta. Mr. Hinman, we're honored that the first speech that you chose to make is in Brooks Medicine Hat. I'll say it again, we're absolutely honored that you've came here tonight. So Mr. Hinman has had a long passion for education and learning, good government, and at the end of the day, the proper will of the people through government. He is a solution-based individual. One of the things that, I've had the opportunity to share the stage with Mr. Hinman on a number of occasions, and one thing that I'm most impressed with is his strength of character. He also speaks from the heart, and when he gets up in front of an audience, the message that he brings forward is the message that he will take to Edmonton, and at the end of the day, it's what he will enact if he becomes our next Premier of Alberta. Kenny's proven himself a liar, ladies and gentlemen. He can't be trusted. If he comes into this or any other community, anything that he says needs to be taken with a grain of salt. That is not Mr. Hinman. That is not Wild Rose. We fight for you. We fight for yours. We fight for those come next. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, or help me welcome Mr. Hinman to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Hinman.
Well, thanks, Clayton. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Todd. And thank each and every one of you for taking the time to come out here tonight. It's kind of exciting, and I'm going to start off with a little bit of a joke, because when we look around, we're in a world of trouble, and a lot of people, they're depressed. I mean, we've got a lot of problems, a lot of businesses that are really struggling and suffering, but I heard this a long time ago, and I think it's applicable to the situation we're in and why I can be excited in such struggling and tough times. There was two identical twins, but one was an absolute optimist and the other one was a complete pessimist. And so for their birthday, the dad got the one pessimist a nice new little electric go-kart. Got it out, and the boy come running in, he opened up the box and pulled it all out, and he looked at it and he says, "This is disgusting. What am I going to do with this? This doesn't have enough power. It's not going to go fast enough. I'm going to have to stop to recharge it." All kinds of problems, and these batteries just aren't big enough. And the dad just shrugged his shoulders and says, "Well, I don't know." And he handed a pitchfork to his other son and says, "Come with me." And they walked out back to the barn, and there was a stall right full of manure. And the boy just looked with a big smile, and he grabbed that pitchfork and he just started chucking the manure out of there. And the dad says, "Well, why are you so excited? What is so great?" And he says, "With this much manure, there's got to be a good horse in here somewhere." Anyways, with this much problems and with everything that's going on, what I'm so optimistic about is people like yourselves, the Alberta Labour, the members of the Wild Rose Independence Party. They understand the dilemma. They know that we've got to change, and it's kind of discouraging to talk to people who think, oh, everything's okay. When you run in and talk to a number of people, and again, the civil servants and all of those, they haven't been hurt. And something I talked about way back last November, December, is when they were shutting down businesses again. And I says, if those individuals who are making these decisions had to give up themselves what they were taking from the other workers, these lockdowns in this situation wouldn't have lasted for a day. They'd have said, well, let's think about this a little bit. If they were told, well, if I'm shutting down your business, then I have no business. I get no pay. If I'm shutting down or I'm going to take you down to 15%, well then okay, I only get 15% of my salary. These so-called experts that put punitive punishment on Albertans, and for what? Oh, they said for scientific evidence. I'm sure each and every one of you are aware that all of the individuals who have been charged and closed down have tried to get their day in court, and they haven't been able to get it. They're postponed. And the judges have been saying, well, if the politicians have this fear is good enough. Not like what it says here in our Constitution, where it has to be demonstrably justified before we lose our freedoms. Oh no, just if the politicians are fearful of what might happen, that's good enough. But probably what's the most disturbing thing for me is this attack on personal individuals, their lives, their businesses, where their kids going to school, and they justify everything with the numbers. They don't ever look at the individual, and that's what's upside down. And so I want to start off by talking about the Wild Rose Independence Party and what is the proper role of government. And for me, and all the years of my studying and observing and looking at these things, the reason why governments exist is because people come together to delegate their authority to protect their life, to protect their property, and to protect their freedom. These, as Rick was talking about, are the inalienable rights declared in the Declaration of Independence in the United States. Each of us are born with, I believe, inalienable rights. They're God-given rights to us. We don't get our rights from the government. We don't get our rights from some external force that says yay or nay. Thank you. We have these rights as individuals. And then we form government so that those rights can be protected. And we have the rule of law. And we recognize the supremacy of God in our Constitution. But those things have all been thrown out. And so the Wild Rose Independence Party is absolutely 100% about protecting the individual's life, their freedom, their property, and their pursuit of happiness. And there's just that's first and paramount. And government can't take that step while all of a sudden deciding that I know what's best and how to protect your life, and I'm taking yours away to protect his, or hers to protect hers. I mean, this is what the government does. It divides and conquers, and it's wrong. We got to go back to protecting the individual, because that protects the family, that protects the society as a whole. And when they start looking at numbers and saying, oh, well, this industry, is causing this problem, and we're going to hurt this one, and they start doing all of their calculations, and I don't know, just their voodoo medicine, it doesn't work. And that's wrong. And that's why we're standing up, and why we've created the Wild Rose Independence Party, and people like yourselves have joined it, is because this is about our individual freedoms, our individual life, and our individual's property, and it doesn't belong to government, nor is it governed by government. There's a few things that we absolutely have to do. Don't have my glasses on. I didn't write it big enough. I want to make sure I brought it in the right order. But number one, we need to reduce the size of government. It's unbelievable. Number two, we need to reduce the taxes on individuals. They're draconian and they're just unacceptable, and we've got to reduce them. We've got to reduce the rules and regulations that government imposes on the individuals and on businesses. They always come up with something new, damaging. And then I want to say I'm excited to be here. This is my first speech as the official elected leader of the Wild Rose Independence Party, and I can promise you, as the leader of the Wild Rose Independence Party and Premier of this province, the first thing that we will be doing is reducing the salary of MLAs and ministers and the Premier by 25% of their base salary today. That Premier Kenny and Rachel Notley have no desire to put Albertans first. They pad their own pocket. They're attacking the nurses and frontline workers and act like that's the problem. The problem is at the top. The beast is out of control. Senior bureaucrats make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Their wages are just, it's an insult to the Alberta worker. And so we need to do that. But number two, we'll have accountable MLAs. We will have recall, not some insult of a bill that you can't recall someone. For the Wild Rose Independence Party, it'll be 50% plus one of the total number of voters in the last election. If 10,000 people voted, you need to collect 5,001 signatures and fire that individual who's not representing you. And that'll be 24/7. Not saying, oh, the first 18 months you don't need to worry about calling out us. You know, we're free for the first 18 months. And oh, by the way, the last 6 months, so 24 of the 48 months we're not accountable. And then to say, well, first of all, you got to sign a signature and get 40% of the electorate to sign that to see if, in fact, we really want to fire them. I mean, it's an insult to Albertans. And Jason Kenney has betrayed us left, right, and center. He promised us, that he was going to fight for pipelines. He's rolled over on those. He hasn't fought for a single pipeline. He promised that he'd fight for jobs. He hasn't done that for any of our jobs. Again, he's rolled over to Ottawa. Again, his big promise was he was going to stand up to Ottawa. Well, what a joke. He's got in bed with Ottawa. He isn't protecting us. He's betrayed Alberta. And the NDP were toxic to Alberta. We need to have a strong and viable industry. Brooks is one of the remarkable places in Alberta. You've got the beef industry and a packing plant here. You have oil and gas. You have irrigation, and the produce that you produce here is phenomenal. And this is the heart and spirit of Alberta. People are here. They're surviving. They're doing well one amongst each other and deciding what business they want to do. And as Clayton came out to start a business here for a better way, that's what Alberta should be about. That opportunity, that freedom to pick and choose should be ours. Not a government with rules and regulation and taxes and order and councils that are picking and choosing. All of this is to the detriment and hurting Alberta. We're almost on life support. It's time that we rip that off and leave the hospital room, this so-called government coddling to say, oh, we're going to look after this industry. Oh, we're going to look after that. And oh, don't worry, we're going to have an education system that's going to have more propaganda and misinformation than you could ever decipher. No, we need to have truth. We need to have freedom. And that's what the Wild Rose Independence Party is all about, individual freedom. And so, like the little boy with the pitchfork, and somewhere in all of this, there's got to be a good horse. Alberta is a great place. We have the people, we have the land, we have the resources, we have the water. But are we going to be allowed to choose and I guess I'm going to say pave our destiny? Or are we going to let Ottawa shut us down? Because right now, Ottawa is on full-out attack. They want to shut down our industries, they want to shut down Alberta, and they want us on life support. I think that there's nothing more insulting than to listen to Trudeau mimic the World Economic Forum and basically saying by 2030 you will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, we might not own anything, but they can't tell us that we'll be happy. You can look around anywhere in the world where we don't get to own our property and stuff, and people are not happy. They spend more time on the bottle and on vices than they do enjoying life. And that's not the Alberta way. We love to get out and work. We love to get out and play. And we can do all of that, but not under the current federal government that wanting to shut us down. Let's talk about a few of the steps that we need to take. I always say independence. What is that? How do we achieve it? You know, as young children and growing up, you have your parents, you're going to school, you're getting an education, and some people are really quick out the door, and they realize at a young age of 12 or 15 what they want to be, and they're focused to achieve that. Others are slower. Some, you know, they maybe have graduated, they're out there, they don't know what they want to do, they work in the workforce for a few years, get some experience, and then boom, they figure out what they want to do. My youngest child went to work for Safeways, pushing the carts, and she just couldn't believe how much hard work it was, and what she got paid was the least of anybody in the whole organization. And she said to me at about 14 or 15 years of age when she was doing this, is, wow, I realized I want to get an education because it's hard manual labor you don't get paid for. But those people at the cashier and the people up above, they're not doing anything. And they're getting paid 3 times what I'm getting paid. And so she got that lesson. And that's what Albertans are. We've had that lesson. We have that pride of being self-sufficient. We're not looking for government handouts. We just want our freedom to be able to do what we want to do, what we love to do, and to get paid for it and not be restricted. And that's the opportunity that we have. But so going back, what are the steps to independence? There's about 6 things that I feel that Alberta needs to do to take the proper steps to give us the confidence to realize, you know what, we can vote in a referendum, a successful referendum, but Todd, I'm going for 70 or 75%. 50% isn't close to what I think that we need. The first thing is that we actually need to have our own police force and our judicial system. I mean, the Supreme Court has ruled against us. They're going against the Constitution. The dissenting votes on environment versus resources were there. But we need to have our own police force. We can't have Justin sending them out, you know, whether it's shutting down our businesses because we didn't have the proper personal protection equipment, or there's too many people in there. I mean, it's just unbelievable how paternalistic our federal government is and how they want to impose along with our provincial government. So we need to have our own Alberta Revenue Agency along with our police force. We need to be able to pay for those things. We can't be sending all of our money down to Ottawa and then ask them to transfer it back, saying that, oh, well, you know, here's your money. Everybody often asks, well, how do we pay for the police force? Because Ottawa, you know, pays for a certain percentage. No, they don't. We pay for that plus, and then Ottawa sends the money back out here. We need to have our own Alberta pension plan. The Canada pension plan has huge unfunded liabilities. Albertans as a whole send about $2.5 billion more to Ottawa than what comes back. But the beauty of this is that even as a sovereign nation, if you earned and you have the Canada pension plan, there's Canadians all over the world that still get your Canada pension plan. And so when I'm talking about the Alberta pension plan, that's more for the younger ones or seniors that, like I say, we'll do as transition. Those are all negotiable things and the transfers back and forth. But we need to have a pension plan that actually is fully funded. Had we done what Quebec did and started the Quebec pension plan, we would be like Quebec and have hundreds of billions of dollars in our pension plan fully funded for our seniors. But we can reduce our premiums and increase our benefits for our seniors, and that's what we'll do. Employment insurance is another crazy one. We as Albertans have to work longer, harder, more hours, more days, and yet we send our employment insurance out east, And then they tell other areas, well, it's kind of tough here, you know, well, you only have to work so many hours a week and we'll give you this so many weeks out of the year. And it's crazy. We need to have our own employment insurance here in Alberta, funded by Alberta laborers and paid to those that are struggling. We need to have our own immigration policy. The Constitution says it's provincial jurisdiction. We don't need Justin Trudeau bringing in people and sending them here on the taxpayers' dimes. In the old days, they were people had pledges from family, from businesses that were bringing in people that we need. We need to revert back to that. But we'll have Albertans choosing who's coming in and how they're helping us, not having people sent from Ottawa who says, oh, here, you need to have room for another 100,000 people we're sending out there, and then using our tax dollars to support them is just wrong. These are critical issues, but the one that is going to be kind of the juggernaut in all of this and where they're using it to leverage and to shut us down is the environment. You know, in 1905 we joined Canada as a third-class citizen, and we didn't have rights for our resources and our land. In 1930, Premier Brownlee fought hard with Ottawa, and we had the Resource Transfer Act. And that gave us the authority to develop our resources and the land here, and no longer was involved with Ottawa, which was a great move forward, and we became a second-class citizen. But in the 80s, they came in and they trumped the Resource Act with the so-called Environmental Act. I'm sick and tired of the hypocrites out east. They don't even know what the petrochemical industry does. They don't even know the things in front of them, how much came because of oil and gas. Medical equipment, 70% of it is from the petrochemical industry. And if you go through our lives on all of the things that come from there, these people are hypocrites just on the byproducts, not even talking about the pure energy that they use to heat their home and the transportation and everything else. And they want to shut it down. This isn't a case of biting the hand that feeds you. This is literally cutting off the hands that work and provide for you, and we're going to have none of that. We will have our own environmental act, and we will protect our land, we'll protect our air, and we'll protect our water, and we won't be hypocrites about it. But after we've done those things, and Albertans have seen that, you know, wow, we have our own police force, we have our own pension plan, our own immigration, and our employment policy, and we're collecting our taxes here, and they'll realize that this isn't such a scary big problem, that we actually can and do survive, and we're doing very well with that. And at that point, we will let Albertans decide in a referendum, do you want to be free and prosperous and safe? Or do you want to stay part of a sinking Canada that owes over $1 trillion, that has policies that are detrimental to our forward motion and our success? And then let Albertans choose. And I see, like I say, a 75% plus adoption of a referendum on sovereignty, because we all realize just how bad the situation is. But anyways, that's kind of the nutshell of my speech, is that I'm very optimistic that as we get out and share these things with Albertans, they'll be there, they're ready for it. But the most important thing about all of these town halls is I love the questions. They come from the heart. People have concerns. Everyone has something different. And so if we're ready, I'd like to open up the floor to Q&A, and again, it'll go on and we'll have an interesting discussion here.
I've got a mic, so if anybody has any questions, just put your hand up, and I'm delighted to. There we go. Don't be shy. Ask the tough questions. We've got one here.
Probably don't need a mic.
Oh, it's best to have the mic.
Just wondering, sir, how do you become premier? Because you got to win all of Alberta, pretty much, do you not?
No. We only need to actually win 44 ridings. There's 87. The premier is 44 or more. And I just see that as very doable. I mean, rural Alberta realizes that we've been shafted, and our support in rural Alberta is already at over 30% in many ridings. Angus Reid poll basically said we could possibly win 2 or 3 ridings today. And with COVID and all of the rules and regulations, it's been very hard to get out. Censorship is another real problem. I have to be very careful on what I answer on YouTube and Facebook. I've been censored once. I realize there's some things that I can't talk about publicly on YouTube and Facebook, but we can certainly talk about as individuals. But this is the way we become the government, is you take a riding like this, and I'm so grateful to be here at Brooks at this starting inauguration, is you build the CA. And my challenge to each and every CA is to get 500 members. Once you get 500 members, you open it up for nominations. And those 500 members find a good individual that's wanting to run in that area and get them elected. And then we go on and we keep selling memberships and we get to 3,000. And as Clayton referred to, we don't want another emotional vote. What we need is a rational vote. We need people to vote for what they believe in, not to vote for what they're scared of. And this is what we're really struggling. It is more governments are voted out than are voted in. Rachel Notley never got voted in. Jim Prentice and the Progressive Conservatives got voted out. They put out a raw deal that basically Albertan says, you know what, if that's the way you're going to behave, you don't deserve government, and people voted them out. And so one of the things is what's going to be the ballot question in 2023? And I want to say it's a vote for Alberta first. We have a premier who is bent on trying to pacify Ottawa and to dance the dance with Ottawa, and that doesn't work for us. We need to have our own destiny. We need to be in control of our rules and our laws and our taxes and our regulations. And so I'll ask Albertans, do you want to waste your vote on Jason Kenney and the UCP who have betrayed us? Or worse, do you want to vote for the NDP who their policies are toxic for Alberta? Or do you want to vote for a sovereign, free country? Do you want to vote for that determination where we decide our future, not Ottawa? And I just believe that we got overwhelming support in rural Alberta, and I see that moving into Calgary, and I see it on the periphery and 2 or 3 ridings in Edmonton, and that's how we'll win. But it goes back to each individual CA building up their membership, going around and handing out the pamphlets, going door to door, because if we're hoping for the media or we're hoping for social media to get us there, it won't do it. This is going to be a boots on the ground war where we go out door knocking, where we drop the pamphlets, where we talk to our friends, our neighbors, our co-workers, and say, you know what? We've had enough. We're not going to put up with this anymore. We're going to stand up for Alberta, and we're going to say no to all the bad policies that are out there. We will take control of our future, and we'll exercise our autonomy here in Alberta. But hope that answers your question.
Well done, Paul. Well, maybe you wouldn't mind commenting. I know this won't take much. Landlocked. Some people say
We'll answer her question, and then the next one will go.
One of the major problems that I see that we had during the so-called pandemic was allowing an unelected bureaucrat to dictate every move done by our government. How will the Wild Rose Independence Party deal with that issue of not allowing unelected bureaucrats to dictate our lives, as our Chief Medical Officer of Health has done for over 18 months?
Yeah, phenomenal question. And again, there's been so much damage, and many experts have said, including Lieutenant Colonel David Redmond, who was under the Emergency Reaction Committee or Act, we've done more harm than the virus, and that's unacceptable. We actually need to have a plan, an emergency plan. But one thing I've learned from this, but I learned this back in 2013, the Emergency Act is wrong. Never, ever should the government be able to come in and say, you have to shut down your business, you have to leave, you have to go and do this. What they need to do is they can come through and say, you know what, we recommend that you leave town, there's a fire and you need to run, or there's a flood coming. We are asking you to to exit and to leave. But for them to come in and demand and have that court order or to have that power to take us away from our lives, our property, our freedom is wrong. Government's job is to be there to support in those emergencies. I'm just going to go sideways here for a minute. For 2013, June, where there was a huge flood. It was actually, been 8 years ago now, today. This flood came in, I think, on the 19th of June. It's the 20th of July, so we're a little over. The government has warning stations that were upriver from High River. And I think the first one went offline at like 2 or 3 in the morning. And the guy monitoring just thought, that's funny, really weird. And 2 hours later, the next one went offline. He says, man, I can't believe this. 2 of them gone offline. This is really something. And then at 7 o'clock, the last one went out. I think there was 3, but I may be mistaken on this. But anyways, then the flood hit around 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning in High River. And the people took action. There were farmers that came in with tractors. There were construction workers with front-end loaders and trucks and everything else. And they started rescuing the people and helping them. The government finally realized what was going on. Oh my goodness, the reason why they're out is because there's a flood. Who would have ever thought that our stations were vulnerable to a flood? And that's why we're not there. But once they came in, that they start stopping all the volunteers. Oh, it's not safe for you to be here in a big grain truck picking up people. You know, we need to come up with something different. And they stop the momentum, I just say the entrepreneurship, the spirit of Alberta of helping, and they come in. It was wrong. Let those people keep doing it. Government's job is to disseminate the best information they can for you, the individuals, to choose. But for government to shut down your business or say you can't go back to your home, people weren't able to go back to their homes for over 30, 40 days in some parts of High River. They literally barricaded off. They couldn't even go back to get your treasures, things that were important. It was just unbelievable. And this is what happens when government confiscates your rights, your freedoms, to act on yourself and saying, oh no, we know better. No, you can't go back. Like I say, that was a wake-up call for me on just how bad government is when it comes to an emergency act, and now we've seen it province-wide in this last one. And so our emergency act, we will not be going in and saying that the government has the right to confiscate your property, to shut down your business, to force you out of your home. No, we will be informing people, and then they can have their own decision. But Jason Kenney, he handed that over to the chief medical officer. He didn't have to do that. This is just a ploy against strategic position to say, oh, I'm not the one to make the decision. This expert here is. She's not going to give you any real information. She won't answer your questions. They use faulty science on so much. I mean, we all know the PCR tests aren't reliable. I haven't heard it that I know for a fact, but my understanding is that they dropped the PCR test from 35 cycles down to 25 cycles because they want to show that things are working. But it's just been a joke. They don't give us the real answers. And Wild Rose Independence Government will not do that. And on top of all of that, when you say, is it will actually be recalled. If you're upset, you can go collect the signatures and fire us. What could we do with Jason? We could just hold rallies, we could have protests, we could phone, but we can't do anything. You need to be able to fire your elected representatives when they're doing you harm or you don't agree with them. We're waiting for the next one. Is there someone right there, right beside you?
Impressive there, Todd. Sorry, Paul. I was wondering if the people that are already on CPP or like Todd thinks he's older than me, well, it's untrue, but like it's very, very close. What happens to our contributions already given in?
Well, the Canadian pension plan, you've already got that contract, and that's yours. And so, like I say, even if you were to move and say, I'm going to Mexico, you would get your Canada pension plan. So that's not in jeopardy, the one that you already have for seniors or those getting close by. And they'll kind of have that option. And there'll be a transition. I'm not sure how we're going to work it out. But the fact of the matter is, anybody who's been contributing to the Canada pension plan, that will either be transferred over to the Alberta pension plan and be part of it, or like I say, that you can remain and keep getting your Canada pension plan. Just because we're in Alberta or Mexico or over in Europe somewhere, you still get that. But does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Paul.
Okay.
I'd like to ask, with the separation or whatever, how do you propose we market our goods and services?
As in like our beef and our oil and gas? Excellent question. I'm going to tie that in with Todd's about being landlocked. I believe that Alberta has some of the best products in the world, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's our beef, whether it's our grain. We have phenomenal individuals here that produce first-class quality products that compete, in my opinion, with anything in the world. And when you have a good product, you usually have a demand. It's when you have a poor product. Like for myself, I don't want to eat anything that's come from China. Sorry, not interested. Don't care how many people have tested it and say they're not interested. But when it comes to Alberta beef, when it comes to our grain, our oil and gas, to me it's second to none. And that's one of the things that as soon as we form government, we will certainly be going around and we actually can have free trade here in Alberta because we don't need to protect the auto industry. We don't need to protect the aluminum industry. There's nothing that we need to protect here and say, oh, well, we kind of want free trade, but oh, by the way, we're going to protect our librarians and our books here because we want to be able to have a printing press here and compete. There isn't anything that I believe that we need to compete with that we're going to have protectionism. But on the other side of that, though, for national security, I want to see Alberta absolutely boom. I want to see a pharmaceutical company here in Alberta that are producing the drugs that we need. I want to see petrochemical business that's producing the medical. All of those things are products that we can and should be exporting. Because we're small, we can build it. One of the other goals that I have is that we'll be eliminating all of the carbon tax. Energy is it's a basic input, whether it's in industry or in your home or in your vehicle. Our quality of life is directly related to the cost of energy. And you go to third world countries and food might be 50, 70, 80% of their cost of living. They work hard and then they just barely have enough to buy the food. After food, then it comes, your housing, your protection, your transportation. We can be competitive in the world because we have the oil and gas here and there's no reason to be taxing it. And then I want to go to the landlocked thing, so sorry, but how many of you are aware that the federal government or BC government just announced a $10 billion pipeline from northeastern BC to the coast that they've given the go-ahead basically? Anybody read that? That was just this week. And we are left out when that northeastern BC is actually right now built in to the Alberta hub, and that's how they get their product out, is through us. But the federal government and the BC government is going to say, oh, we'll let you have a pipeline and we'll let you go to Tidewater, but not us. This shows just how broken and toxic our relationship is and why we need a premier who stands up for ourselves. But the Eagle Spirit Energy Corridor is one that's going there. I don't know whether this is part of that group or not, that this announced this pipeline, but as a sovereign nation, we will have international law that allows us access to Tidewater, plus we'll have leverage. We can actually say no. We can put on a transportation tariff. Vancouver is the biggest port in Canada, and the other 5 ports don't bring in, to my understanding, as much domestic product for Canadians as Vancouver. And if they're not going to let us ship our oil and gas out, they're not going to be shipping all their products out east and not be paying for it. But we will actually have leverage, and we can be so bold as to say, you know what, Alberta's rat-free. And we just don't know if that stuff that's going through your province is rat-free, and we're going to detain it for 6 months and make sure it's rat-free. But there's things we can do, but we just actually need a premier who puts the people first and is not worried about winning votes in Ontario or Quebec or the Maritimes. This is about Alberta, where our economy is crashing. This is the analogy to an airplane. What does it tell you to do? You buckle up your own seatbelt. You put on your own oxygen mask. That's what we're going to do here in Alberta, and national security will be one of our top priorities. Like I say, to produce pharmaceuticals, to get a manufacturer here building gas and diesel engines and trucks and cars. We're not going to kowtow to Ottawa and say, oh, we don't want those products. No, we want them, we're going to use them, and we'll do it environmentally properly. Okay, well this is an area where Todd and I maybe have to agree to disagree. The world and the economy is in such economic turmoil, there's no way, in my opinion, that when you got Biden and Kamala Harris down there, they could be a bigger basket case than us in 2 years from now. Bottom line is that when it comes to currency, you can use any currency you want in the world. And for us to decide now what we're going to do, for me, it's premature. We will do what's best for Alberta when the time comes. And we can look and we'll know the scenario then. And boy, like I say, if it came to the economy and investments, I lose more than I win, just like government. When they try to pick winners and losers in business, they're wrong. And we will wait till the time comes and then decide what currency will serve Alberta best, or whether we'll just have our own. But that's down the road, but it'll be an important decision then.
I understand what you're saying. There's one thing that I have to have a clarification. According to the Canadian Constitution, if Alberta wants to separate, you need the permission of 7 other provinces. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. There's been the Clarity Act, but the bottom line is if we vote to leave, they can't stop us. Like this is, if 2 people are in partnership and the one's leaving, like what do you do? No, you can't go. You got to stay. You got to come back to work. No, you can't do that. No, how do they stop us? We have our own business, our industry, our people here. We've just been, I don't know, naive enough to send it on to Ottawa all the time and then begging to survive here. But if Albertans are on board, we'll take the steps to be independent and, like I say, have all those things, our police force, the judicial, the Canada Pension, the Employment Insurance, the Environmental Act. We will do that, and we will put our province in a strong position so Albertans have confidence and realize, wow, we've got a huge economy. We're the top 15 in the world. We got a government that's actually protecting our lives and our future. We got an education system that's actually getting on track. Our healthcare now all of a sudden is functioning. Wait times are going down, they're shortening. It's exciting. If we're focusing on Alberta and putting Albertans first, I'm excited. That pitchfork and that stall of manure is going to go really fast.
So are you drawing up a draft constitution for Alberta now too then?
We will be doing that as well. There's many groups that are putting together different ideas in the Constitution, but that'll be critical, and that's where our future will depend on, because there's two things that for me that really need to be in that Constitution in order to have a viable future. Number one is accountability through recall. That needs to be entrenched in the Constitution, because governments are notorious as soon as they get in and people start to recall them, oh, we'll change that legislation. And the other one is balanced budgets. I was in the House when Premier Stelmach got rid of Premier Klein's balanced budget legislation. It was just legislation. So Stelmach says, oh no, we need to spend a little bit of extra money. We don't need to balance our money. It's just for capital projects right now. And he started spending that $17 billion sustainability fund that Premier Klein gave him. And I mean, you talk about sucking out the gold fast. It's unbelievable. And so in our Constitution, we need to balance our budget. And if we don't, then the taxes go up the next year, just like municipal government. Their budget's short. What do? Oh, we're raising taxes 2.3%. Calgary, oh, we're going to raise it 6%. There's an outcry. Oh, okay, we'll cut back. We'll just do it 3%. But being accountable and balancing the books goes a long ways for what I call a just society, where we don't sell out our future generations' future at for our benefit, because that's what we're doing right now. What we're passing on to our children and our grandchildren is just, it's immoral and unethical. It's wrong. Who would do this to their children? But yet collectively our politicians are using the Constitution to divide and conquer, and selling out future generations for personal power and status at the current time, and it's wrong. We need to stop it.
Another question I have for you is, we need the votes, or you need the votes, so the party needs the votes, so the 18 probably to 40-year-olds, right? How do you get to them? How do you get to the oil execs? How do you get to the people in the oil industry? Them are the ones that aren't going to like this Trudeau bill for sure.
Well, another excellent question. There have been great questions tonight. The truth is an amazing thing. And the question is can you get the information for people to see it and the truth? The truth is that we're at like $93 billion in debt. The truth is that we spend $20 billion extra. We send about $50 billion a year to Ottawa, and they say that we get $30 billion back. Currently, both the NDP and the UCP are in bed with Ottawa. They think that's a great system. And they say, we need to protect our social programs. Our social programs are at huge risk. I mean, Jason Kenney, he's attacking the nurses right now, saying we need to roll back because of their fiscal irresponsibility. That all of those social frontline workers, whether it's our nurses, our doctors, our teachers, our senior caregivers, our policemen, all of those jobs are at risk because of the current economic policies that the NDP, the Liberal, and the UCP have, and they're doing that. With ours, we actually can enhance the frontline workers. We're going to go, like I say, MLAs, 25% reduction in base salary. Senior bureaucrats, we're going to have reduction in their salaries. And again, when I say reduction, what it is when somebody retires, we won't be saying that, this guy is making $350,000, the next person needs to get it. We'll actually open it up for like a competitive bid, and we'll say, you know what, we're offering this job at $180,000. Is there anybody interested in doing this? And if nobody shows up, then we'll say, well, maybe we need to offer $200,000, but it'll actually be a competitive bid, and their salaries will be in line to the private industries. And this idea of protected jobs and just egregious wages is wrong, and we'll control that. But we'll actually show the younger people that we have a viable future where we can balance our books and pay off our debt, whereas the current one, we're a sinking ship. We don't know what the hardship's going to be, but just the truth.
One more question I have for
Please.
you is, the Liberals, during the pandemic, they've been very good to people, in Alberta and all through Canada. The Alberta people needed the money as well. A lot of young people, a lot of working people, they remember that. And what they do is they go, that Liberal government, how are they? They're such a great bunch of people, they gave us money, right? And we have to get over that somehow. That was actually something that goes against, what you're trying to do. And we have to somehow convince these people that was just at the time. That was just during the pandemic, And we have to somehow get their votes.
One of the most important things in life is the dignity of work. And it's a great, as parents, if we don't teach our children the dignity of work, and let's say we're rich enough and they don't need to work, and we give them an allowance and they enjoy life, and we've seen different celebrities, from rich ones, and how their lives aren't there. The dignity of work is incredibly important for individuals. Their self-worth, their pride in themselves. Suicides are up, domestic violence is up, the abuse of substances, all of these are up. And why? Because the dignity of work and self-reliance is gone. I think it'll be very easy to show these people that you're going to have the dignity of work. The economy will be booming. And yes, there's going to be some that are on government assistance that are going to want to stay there, but the majority know better. And it's just about talking, what are they doing, and the debt that they're running up. What future do we have with that debt? And again, this is such a bad scenario of picking now and losing tomorrow. You know, I'm going to throw away my fishing rod, but I get the fish. That no, you want the fishing rod and to know how to fish the next day and the day after that. And that's what we need to show Albertans. But I'll say one thing, we're not going to compromise our principles. We're not going to have strategists that say, oh, if we give, you know, this special deal to this industry, we'll get so many more votes. No, we're a principled party. We'll be a constitutional democracy that recognizes the supremacy of God and the rule of law, and we won't be allowing divide and conquer. Politicians are just awesome. I'm going to use a bad example here of democracy versus democracy that respects the rule of law. I'm just going to scope the room out here. I'm going to say, okay, we've got some bills that we need to pay. And we'll ask you to keep donating to the party, because that's our biggest challenge right now is membership and donations so that we can get out on the road. But we're going to have a little party afterwards. We're going to go out to eat. Going to have a good time. But we need to vote on who's going to pay. And so what I propose to us as individuals here is that all those are wearing hats are the ones who have to pay. Who's in favor of that? We outnumber the hat wearers. But that's what's wrong with our Constitution. That they buy votes. So I can buy everyone else's votes because you're going to get a free meal and a free beer and something else because we don't have enough hat wearers in here, or vice versa. But that's wrong in a constitution. It's wrong in a democracy. And that's where we show that, you know, it's equal opportunity for all. Not this so-called takeaway from the tyranny of the majority on the minority. And it's wrong. And those are the principles that we will abide by. We'll have in a constitution, and we'll be locked into that and not be able to manipulate people by buying votes with other people's money, because that's all they do.
Mr. Hinman, I'll start with a statement or a story. And then I'll ask you a question after. When I was heavily involved with UCT candidacy when they're here. And Mr. Strankman and Strank's assistant and Kenny's assistant and Kenny and myself were in a 5-man meeting in Coastal Plaza. Am I talking out of turn, Rick? No. Anyway, Kenny, he pounded on the desk. Yeah, it's too late. And Kenny pounded on the desk and he said, I will not allow Alberta Oil, if they shut off, I'm going to shut off the taps. And if they move by truck, I'll enforce truck restrictions. Well, we all know how that went. And I said to him, well, how are you going to ask about the Eastern pipelines? He did the same thing. We all know the story. And I guess what I'm saying is, he sold us out at so many issues. He did, and Rick was there that morning. He'll nod his head for that. And I guess what I'm saying to you is, how do we stop it? Or Paul, how do we stop it?
Well, we need to realize that he betrayed us. We need to fire him in the next election.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, the number one thing that I think that they're going to throw at us is number one, don't split the vote. Well, currently, right now, if there's an election tomorrow, who wins? NDP. They're ahead. So why is he concerned about splitting the vote? Why would we vote for a toxic government or a government that's betrayed us when you can actually vote for people that are going to represent you, and if they don't, you can fire them through recall? I mean, yep, and I mean, that was another thing that he promised. How many times did he promise accountability through recall? And what did it take? Two years almost, and a bit. And do we have a recall bill? No. Yeah, we have a sham. This is like selling a car with no motor in it. Oh, by the way, here's your new car, but good luck pushing it.
You know, Paul, one of the most impressive things that I've heard that you've spoken about, you know, you say it, and sometimes it's subtle, and sometimes it's overt, sometimes it's direct. When Ralph Klein used to talk about the Alberta advantage, other than our people resources, what he talked about when he made that statement is that we had some of the cheapest energy in the Western North American grid. the importance of that competitiveness to our society, to our households, to our municipalities, to our industry, to those that hire people and create opportunity, cannot be overstated. What you're hearing a Wild Rose government is committed to is reducing taxes, improving efficiency, and giving that opportunity for each and every person in this province, for those that are here today, those who are little kids coming up through school, and those who aren't born yet. The most important thing that we can do as a society that the Wild Rose is committed to, and Paul, I'm so proud of you when I hear these things coming out of you, and in reference to that question in the back, in the context about how are we going to overcome a Liberal government that people are going to vote for whoever gives me the most. Well, what we believe in is that the best thing that we can do as government is to provide the circumstances so that opportunity abounds for everybody in our society. We all rise to another level. When you leave here tonight, never forget this. We are an energy superpower. On our own, we would be one of the wealthiest per capita jurisdictions in the province. Our ability to reinvest in society is exactly what we will do. And that's what you're hearing Mr. Hinman committing to, is ultimately that competitiveness and all of the wonderful things that come out of it, not only for us, but for those that come next.
Thanks, Todd. Let's talk about oil and gas policies for just a minute here. The federal government's policies, C-48, the tanker ban, C-69, the pipeline, no pipeline policy, and you go back historically on shutting us down, it has literally been a chokehold on Alberta. And yes, we're still breathing, but we got to break that chokehold and to be able to just have the entrepreneurs go out and do it. One of the things that I've been fighting, and again, it goes back personally on my own farm, is that they drilled some wells. I fought them. I didn't want them to drill the wells where they were doing it. The Energy Board says no, they get to. I challenged the reserve specialist saying that, that it's not there. The reason why you're drilling this well is so you can get a pipeline through. And then property rights aren't protected properly. It's funny how government can benefit from pipelines and from power lines and everything else, but the landowners, they have to make the personal sacrifice. That's another area that's backwards. But I knew lots of families that made a living on what we call stripper wells. And the big companies say these aren't economically viable, we're abandoning them, and they shut them down. But the well that was drilled on our property, on our home corridor, would have powered our farm. But it wasn't economical to build a pipeline and to put in there. But we probably would have powered our farm for 10 years with what was in that well. There is no reason why we don't have these wells and have, like Medicine Hat, greenhouses all across the province. Our rules, our regulation, and our taxes have destroyed our industry, and we are going to eliminate those taxes. We will regulate and make sure that the proper environmental conditions are there. But boy, if there's a gas well on a person's property, and they can run a greenhouse, or if they want to have a compressor there and use that energy, why are we taxing it to death? I use the analogy that we're going to the World Hockey Tournament, and we cut off half of our blade and half of our stick to go compete with the rest of the world and say, oh, we're the best. Our rules and our regulations are destructive and hurting us, and we will go back to be full competitive, and that means responsible regulations and no taxes on these products. Question at the back.
Paul, like you and the Wild Rose Independence Party, my concern is always about the taxpayer. The burden is getting too much for the everyday garden variety Alberta taxpayer. The example is, go look at your utility bills.
Yeah.
Just a third of the bill that we're getting charged for is the usage for the power or the gas. The other 2/3 is all other issues. I do believe, and you can answer this, Paul, the Wild Rose Party would look at doing something different in that aspect.
Absolutely. I mean, there's three things that you need to worry about in a society, in my opinion. First of all, is big government, central government. When big government steps in and starts to say what we can and can't do, we're in trouble. And then you get big business that goes along with big government. And they basically put everybody else out of business because big business talks to big government and says, we need these rules and regulations. We need all of these little nuances in there because they know that the little person can't do it. And then the last one is big unions. There's nothing wrong with unions, but we don't need some union boss from Ottawa or from Edmonton representing 90,000 people any more than we need the premier representing 4 million people. We need individual representation. But when it comes to all of these things, we just have to turn our system upside down and go back at respecting the individuals. The reason why we have gas throughout Alberta is because they form co-ops. The reason why we have power throughout Alberta is because the people in those areas got together and formed co-ops. I could tell you stories that would make your bones break on how the big businesses have basically shut down our rural electric, the REAs, associations that we have. We've got the intrusion of government saying, we can only deal with supersized companies. Only the big ones can come in. No, I don't know if there's 3 REAs left in the province now, but the province has sold us out. I'm sure most of you realize that Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway owns most of all of that stuff when it comes to our railways, when it comes to our power lines. I was there when they make different proposals to ASIS, the Alberta Electrical Systems Operator, ASO. And I saw one proposal where they wanted to put in 67 miles of power line when the direct hookup was 20 miles. And the excuses that they used to get 3 times the distance were like who buys into this stuff? That this is like telling a little kid that, this candy is good for you, you need to eat it when you're needing to give them medicine. I mean, we're going to spend the money, and I think, it's like $1 million a mile, $67 million, when the direct line and the corridor is already there for the old line is $20 million. And ASO gives the green light because they use their excuses. These are all types of things that we need to have accountability and stop the shenanigans that go on, because it's just infiltrated our whole system, whether it's our healthcare system, whether it's our power grid system, that we have so much corruption when it comes to open and fair competitive bidding. It doesn't happen. And then what's the government's latest ones, what we're going to have is private partnerships, or what we're going to do is they're going to build it for us at cost plus 10. There's no estimates. The Calgary South Hospital, what did that go? Triple the cost? Grand Prairie, I think 10 times the original cost. But the government says, these are great deals. These guys are phenomenal. They're going to give it to us at cost plus 10%. In High River, that was another case. All of the volunteers that were coming in there, we had little 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 watt generators, running pumps, running fans. When they turned over the big contract for, it was $20 or $40 million to another wonderful Alberta company, you know what they brought in? 15,000 kVA generators that were costing $620 a day. We could buy a generator for that place. And you know what they had the audacity to say? You can't get one of these generators for that price. We got the best pricing in the province. If you go out and rent, it's going to cost you $800 a day. And the government buys into that. That's the type of garbage that goes on, and they just look the other way. I mean, they had to decommission the railway bridge in High River. They brought in 2 super cranes that sat there for over 30 days. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars it cost. And for the first 30 days, all they did was hold tarps that went under the bridge so that nothing fell into the river in case, when they were cutting it or something happened. I would honestly say that if we'd have gone to the salvage companies and say, who's bidding on this bridge, we probably could have sold it for $5,000 and they would have decommissioned it and got it out of there. But that's the kind of garbage that goes on. You just shake your head and say, are you serious? How can you be so blind? How can you be so reckless with taxpayers' money? This is the stuff that goes on. Like I say, I've been up there too long. Rick's the same way. You can just go story after story. You look at this and you say, are you serious? You're really going to pay somebody, tens of thousands, if not $100,000 to decommission a bridge when you could probably sell it? It's just mind-boggling, Glenn. It really is.
Tell them about the sturgeon fight.
I've been on record a few times on this, but
Tell them
he says, tell them about the Sturgeon refinery. I should maybe make Rick tell you his version because people have heard mine. But the bottom line, Ian McGregor said that this is the best economic opportunity of his lifetime, a very successful businessman. Ted Morton wrote and said this is going to cost the taxpayers billions of dollars. And now what are they wanting to sell it for, Rick?
I don't know the number, but we own half.
But they're trying to sell it because we're losing money every year on the refinery. How do we do that? Only government can come up with ways of losing a winning race. They do it. And you just sit back and say, this is impossible. No, give it to government. They'll figure out a way to make a winning project defunct. But no, it's discouraging. And it's one of the reasons why I've got back into politics is because we need to fix this. We are in a political war. The only way we fix this civilly, peacefully, and democratically is in the next election. And I have to admit that right now, I'm so concerned with all the censorship, with all of the garbage that's going on. Will we make it to 2023 and be able to have a free and honest election? Every day I just like this can't be happening. I mean, with Bill C-10 and the censorship, and now you see Biden down in the States this week, doubling down with Facebook and YouTube. If you say anything that goes against the government narrative, you're deplatformed, and we can't afford to do that, so we got to toe the line on what we can talk on public, but the bottom line is, these individuals need to go. If you have no desire for a future Alberta, well, let's do the same thing over again. Isn't that the definition of insanity that good old Einstein gave us? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome? We can't have an NDP, we can't have a Liberal, we can't have a Conservative, a United Conservative Party government again. That's insane in my opinion. And that's why good people like yourself and Todd and Rick and Clayton and Sonny and everyone else is here, because they realize that we've got to stand up and do something. It's on us. As Todd says, the onus is ours. What are we going to pass on? Are we even going to protect our current neighbors and friends now and their businesses? We've got to do this.
Mr. Hinman, I agree with you on many fronts. Alberta is rich, we have many resources, but how are we going to protect them? For example, in 1948, when Israel was established, they had an army and an air force in place to defend against all the neighbors. I see Alberta in the same position. When we start ruffling feathers in Ottawa, what's going to keep them from sending their army over this way? The other thing is this.
Let me answer that one, then do another one, second one. Excellent question. Military forces are critical, but whether we have the reserves with Albertans as well. You look at Switzerland, they've been able to defend themselves. I love the story. I'm not going to be able to say it right, but anyways, they said, "What are you going to do if 20,000 Germans show up at the border?" He says, "Well, 10,000 of us will shoot twice." It's different now because of the act, but the bottom line is that the Canadian forces are here in Alberta. I've been told that it costs about $15 billion a year to run the front lines of the military, and about $6 billion for Ottawa. We can actually hire and buy it here, in my opinion, and we can create the military that we need to protect ourselves. But this isn't Hungary. I don't know how many of you know Hungary, how they booted out the Russians, and that tragic story when they cried out for the United States to save them, and everybody stood back. These are different times, but it could come back to that. But we'll be seeking peaceful, amiable ways. We don't have any animosity towards any of our neighbors. We don't want to hurt them. We just want to protect ourselves. We're more than happy. You treat us right, we'll treat you right. I don't know. There's people that concern that. And again, if China decides to attack us today, can Canada protect us? I don't think so. They'd walk over us in a day, in my opinion. If the U.S. decided they wanted to take us, it'd take an hour. It just, I don't want to resort to a military answer. I believe in a democratic, peaceful process, and that's what we'll be pursuing and following as a Wild Rose Independence government.
The other side is this, on the corporate side. Again, now in the last few days there's been hostile takeovers of Alberta companies from the US. And the other side is this, that for example in the past few years now, AltaLink, also owned by US now. And then retiring farmers more so in Saskatchewan than in Alberta, but they're selling to the highest bidder so they can retire. Quite often that's either big corporations from the east, investment companies, or else foreigners even. There's a large amount of foreign money flowing into Canadian oil sands and Canadian farmland. How would you counter these events?
Well, excellent question. I don't know that I have the absolute, well, I know I don't have the absolute answer, but again, that's where a provincial government, you can put in rules and regulations and taxation such that we benefit from that. I'll just use the idea of out-of-province workers. If we're collecting the taxes here and you're working, for Suncor and then you fly out all the time, well, we're going to be collecting those taxes here and they stay in Alberta. And so we will set up rules and regulations that benefit and protect Alberta and Alberta's citizens and the businesses. And we're not going to allow companies and individuals to come in, strip away the cream and leave us without the fat of the market. We can protect that, and we will, I believe, through proper rules and regulations. But hope that answers your question. Oh.
Hi. I guess there's going to be a few more mistakes made before we actually get any place, but that's just natural life. I've had to buy a few things lately, and I've been looking around, and just about everything's made in China. I think one of the campaign slogans should be made in Alberta.
100% behind you, and I'll comment on mistakes. He who does nothing makes no mistakes, but that's a mistake in itself. You need to do something. So we'll try. and again, I'm 100% behind that. I've always felt for years, like I'll use the example of the sugar industry. Many people have said it's not economically viable. I want to say the number one reason why it's not economically viable is because the cost of our energy. You dehydrate the sugar and the bulk peep and all of that, and our energy costs are too much here, especially when we compare to third world countries that are using the sun and whatever else. But I really believe that our regulations and our taxations are the key, and there's only one taxpayer, and that's you and me as the individual. You don't tax a corporation, you tax their clients. I love using the example of the barber. I knew a barber that was living in Calgary, and I went to talk to him. His property taxes kept going up, his business taxes were going up, and he had to cut hundreds of heads just to pay all of his taxes before he was actually paying himself. And he said to me, Paul, he says, I'm at $17 a cut. I said, I've got to go to $20 a cut in order to pay all of the new taxes and things that are in place. I said, as soon as I do that, I'm going to lose 20-25% of my customers. They won't be coming in. They'll be cutting it at home. They'll do something different. And he says, I lose. This idea that somehow our small businesses, and especially in our small towns like this, it's just terrible what municipal governments often impose on our businesses to say that, we're not going to tax the homeowners. And that's another whole area that we haven't talked about tonight, but taxation, it's wrong. I have an excellent document that I got when I first got elected. Alberta Finance gave it to me, but I was never able to get it after that. And I've talked to different taxpayers, federation, everything else, to say we need this document reproduced. But it shows how many people paid taxes, how many dollars they paid, and there. And again, in 2005, if my memory's right, there was about 11,000 tax returns filed from here in Brooks. Oh boy, what was the numbers on that? I think it was $65 million sent federally and about $20 million sent provincially. So about $95 million left Brooks from Brooks taxpayers. And then we ask Ottawa what we need in return. And we need to have these, three-party projects to build a road or something. We need the federal and the provincial and municipal. We need to be collecting the taxes locally and addressing our local issues. I think that the 2019 or 2020 budget for Brooks was $26 million. And this is, it's crazy that municipal government that's closest to the people has the least amount of money to provide those services that we need here. And we will be turning that upside down. The last thing that we need is to have Edmonton become the old Ottawa. There's no reason for towns and municipalities to be asking for tax money back when they can't meet the basic needs and facilities that you want in your town, whether it's a rec facility, whether it's a new road, whether it's updated lights, all of those things. But our tax system is wrong, and we need to turn it around. But when you do all of that, we can be competitive. Like I say, if there's no tax on our oil and gas and you want to start up a business, the greenhouse is the easiest one. We're very competitive when all of a sudden that huge tax going in there. I mean, cheap energy, that's the basis for a free and prosperous society. I'm just excited at the opportunities because we're going to be focusing on our taxes and the size of government and the scope of government, and allow each and every one of you to go out and do what you want to do. You want to work and make money and enjoy life, and we'll be able to do that as a sovereign nation.
About what kind of giants that need to be slayed that you have in mind, but I think one of the biggest ones.
Ottawa.
One of the biggest ones is we like the instant free stuff, and that's going to be really hard to get out of society, and that's why a lot of people are on just serve and stuff like that. We're just naturally lazy to do that, and how, unless we see a better picture, maybe made in Alberta, is that pride that the Americans have that we need to have a little bit more of? Just a suggestion.
No, and I should go back because I kind of got off track here, but like I say, there's no reason why Albertans, in my opinion, wouldn't be willing to pay 5 cents a pound more for sugar if we just know about it. That here's Tabor sugar, it's going to cost you 25 cents a pound, or you can buy foreign sugar for 19 cents. And I mean, how many times do we go to the store and buy the cheapest product that's there? Often we know, that one's not going to, there's no value in that. I mean, sugar is basically sugar, but yet the quality is there. But this Buy Alberta, Alberta Pride, I absolutely love it. We need to insist on it. We hear it all the time, buy local. But we can't buy local because they can't afford to be competitive with the big businesses, whether it's Costco or the Superstore, and we need to change that. We need to make it a playing field that allows a small entrepreneur to be competitive, and that'll be our aim.
I gotta clap that. That's
One of the problems that I have is I get very serious. When people are asking me questions, we go, Paul, you're too serious. This is serious stuff, but yet we can do better. So I'm going to throw in another joke. I only have 2 jokes in my briefcase, and I'm going to throw out the second one here to try and liven things up again. But two politicians die. The first one was a notorious corrupt politician, bought many things, and got up to the gate, and Peter says, you have a lot of nerve even showing up here, and here's the elevator, you're going to hell. The next one come along, and he looks and says, well, Mr. Beasley, he says, wow, this is very rare. Every now and then we actually get an honest politician, and you actually have an option. You can come on into heaven, or you can choose to go down with your colleagues and your buddies and go to hell. And what would you like to do? Todd sits there and thinks, holy smokes, like an option. He says, I better go and check them out. And Peter says, well, because we run an economic system here, what we always do is have you come into heaven for the first 24 hours, because if you're happy and want to stay here, there's no point sending you all the way down there and have to bring you back. So he goes into heaven, he's walking along in the clouds, music is wonderful, food's wonderful, so peaceful, just amazing. And all of a sudden he gets a tap on his shoulder and says, well, your 24 hours is up. What, already? Yep. He says, so do you want to stay here, or do you want to go visit your friends in hell? He sits there, oh man, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm really curious, and I really would like to kind of see what it is like down there. And he says, well, you've earned it. It's one of these few privileges. So jumps on the elevator, sends him down there, opens it up, and oh my goodness, the party and the booze, the beer, just the party girls, the golf, there's just all the sports. It's just a huge party. He said, he's just shocked, and his buddy, oh, so glad you chose to come down here, Todd. Let me show you around, pull you around, show everything. What is it you'd like? We got everything here. What do you want? And he's just going from one place to the next and seeing all this party and all this. It's just wonderful. And all of a sudden he gets a tap on his shoulders, and he says, you got to come back up and make a decision. And he goes to St. Peter's and I can't believe it. I mean, like, it was really vibrant. It was exciting. There was things happening down there. I mean, it's peaceful and it's wonderful up here, but I mean, that's a partying machine down there, and I really want to go be with my buddies. Not a problem. You're not the first one who made that decision. Jumps on the elevator, door opens, and the big blast of heat, the furnaces are going, everybody's sweating and swearing and having to shovel the coal and keep the furnaces going. Todd asks, well, like, what's going on? Like, where's all the party? Oh, that was yesterday. We were campaigning. This is the real life. But anyways, that's currently the situation. We elect somebody and the doors open and we realize that we're in hell and there's nothing we can do about it. It's too late. That's why you need accountability and recall, so that you can get rid of these individuals. But no, we need an honest, accountable government that the people can control, and not say, well, you can vote again in 4 years on what you want. But anyways, it's just, we have such an opportunity now to put our house in order, to take the steps to be independent, to show people the success that we can and will have here in Alberta, and give them the confidence to vote for what's right. Not to be selling out, and like you say, that free money is terrible. I often use this analogy, and I bring up an ice cream bucket here with a bunch of little packages that are all folded up and nice and neat, and another ice cream bucket here with $100 bills. And I take the first one and say, this will give you an experience of a lifetime. It's crystal meth. I doubt any of you have tried it, but I want you to try this, because this is something that you, without experiencing it, you have no idea what it's like. And I'd pass it around, and I would bet that there wouldn't be a single person in here that would take that crystal meth, because they realize how toxic it is, how addictive it is, and how damaging it is. And they'll say, no, I'm educated, I don't need that. Well, until we can educate the Alberta taxpayers that free money, because I passed the $100 bucket around and everybody takes one out of it, that's what politicians do. And you don't realize the bait that you're becoming dependent on them. You're becoming selfish. You want that from someone else, and we're willing to vote to take it away from other people. That's what our challenge is. Are we going to take the free money that really has been stolen from someone else? It's called legalized plunder. When the government passes legislation to tax an industry or an individual and then redistribute it to buy votes, it's legal plunder. We can't allow that in Alberta. We need to all be equal. We need to have a flat tax, not this idea if someone goes out and works a little bit harder, we're going to have a progressive tax. No, that's wrong, unacceptable, won't be here in Alberta. But anyways,
do 3 more questions, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I guess it's not really a question, but more of a concern that I have. With 2 kids that are in school and them doing doing online schooling, it just seems like the accountability for the students and for the teachers are slowly dissolving. With kids doing at-home schooling, final exams, certain tests, in school, in-person teaching, it's almost like they're in my opinion, it almost seems like the kids are getting lazy, the teachers are getting lazy because they're not doing the amount of work that they did before all this craziness started happening. It just seemed, to me, it seems like the accountability for the students to do good work and to pass their exams, and the teachers to put in quality teaching time for all the children, it just kind of seems like the accountability and the actual work involved to teach our kids are slowly dissolving before our eyes, and everything is going to online teaching. And that, to me, is quite concerning. If you've got any ideas on how we can combat this, like it's...
Well, first of all, I have to say that I love learning, but I hated school. There's a big difference, but it was always interesting. There's a few teachers that somehow could make things interesting and bring out the best in their students, and other teachers that were incredibly obnoxious and boring and could bring the worst out in their students. We need to have an education system that's actually focused on the individual again. And there are some individuals that thrive online and do well, but most don't. And to not have that one-on-one, hands-on in a group is not in the best interest of children. But one of the things with our education system that we will actually be having, that the funds follow the student. And if there's no student in school and they're doing, online education and stuff, we'll do that very different. Universities that do that, you can have, an awful lot of students that are being taught by the best of the best inspiring teachers, and then have other people marking it and stuff. And so if we're going to be going to online, it's going to be revamped to where it's an awesome online and exciting, and where students move at their own speed and not being held back, because that's the other detriment in a classroom. Often the classroom will move at the pace of the slowest individual, and then the others become bored and they don't engage. But no, we're going to be looking at education, and we're going to make sure we're focusing on the student, and that the student is actually learning what they need to do in order to pass on. This idea that, that you've got 8 months, 10 months to learn, and then, you got a 50% or you got 60%. There's lots of educational facts that show that we can actually have a student, we'll use math because it's easy, that if a student is having trouble with fractions, it stays and studies fractions for 3 weeks before it moves on to the next subject. But if they say, fractions are 2 weeks, decimals are this, and trigonometry is another 2 weeks, and going like that, it's not in the best interest of the child. And so we can actually have where each student learns it's what the subject is before it passes on and excels in it. And like I say, some kids will learn it the first day. It's just easy, and they go and they can move on and keep learning. But we want an education system that actually teaches the kids, and the funds follow the student to the parental choice. That's another problem with our education system, is that the parents are being removed and say, you don't know what's best for your child, we do. And we disagree with that. We want parental choice and parents deciding on that curriculum, that there's things in there that they don't want their child learning. We're going to allow those children to be pulled out. And this idea that the teachers get to decide what propaganda that they're teaching our kids and we don't get to know as parents, that's a no-go for us.
Paul, we've got a heck of a following online tonight. Yeah, no, just absolutely delighted with that. We've got a question here, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are. We'll maybe be taking some online questions.
If we want to take a couple of the best online ones, we can, but
we'll focus on the room, but we'll see what we've got here.
Okay.
So in your steps to independence, you mentioned Alberta having their own police force and overhauling the judicial system. And I would be hoping that you could elaborate a little bit more if that accountability is following the judicial system.
Excellent question. I believe in elected civilian oversight. Right now, to remove a judge, I think under our Constitution, the Senate can do that. If a judge is stepped out, the Senate can do that. But there's no accountability to the senators. We know that the Senate is just if we talk about broken, dysfunctional things, the Senate is one of them. But if you have elected civilian oversight, where they as a board look, and if there's a judge, and we've had some bad judges here in Alberta that have actually been censored, if we want to say, or actually removed, but when you have an elected civilian oversight, if they're going sideways, you can actually recall those elected civilians. But it's just important, whether it's the health care, whether it's senior care, the judicial system, we need, and the police system, we need elected civilian oversight. From everything that I've studied, that this is the best way to try and actually serve and protect the people, as opposed to our current system. But yes, we want accountability of our judges as well.
Loving everything I'm hearing. It's just, what's been addressed with the issue with treaties? Because aren't they tied to Canada, and so if they become separate, isn't it a big deal to have to revisit those treaties, right?
Excellent question, and again, like the currency, I don't know where it's going to go, but when I look at the grievances of the average Albertan and why we realize we need to separate, to me that pales in comparison to what our Indigenous people have put up with Ottawa. They don't own their own land. They don't, even when the royalties goes into a trust fund, they can't do anything on their own. It's all about government oversight, and we know how bad that is. We will respect their democratic process of deciding whether they want to be part of us or whether they want to stay and be part of Ottawa. But I just can't see, after 2 years and seeing how great the opportunity is to actually, like I say, no, that's your land. You guys, you get it. You have control of it. We're not going to tell you what to do or how you can do it or whatever else. We'll respect their wishes. But I just believe that do they want to stay on and be part and the subject of the crown, or do they want to be free and prosperous like Alberta can and should be? But it'll be their choice, just like it'll be Albertans to decide, do we want to break away and be sovereign and free, or do we want that ball and chain around our neck and legs with Ottawa telling us what we can't do? But to me, freedom is just the ultimate goal. Anywhere in the world where you have a government that protects that freedom, that the people prosper, the society is safe. It's just hard to understand how it can be so bad in so many places, but it's always because of the power and the corruption, and our own Constitution allows it. I'll throw in an example I was looking at this week, but how many of you have been to the Dominican Republic in here? Anybody been down there? Has anybody been to Haiti? Here's a little island that's just got a border, same people historically, but yet two different governments. Haiti, I think that its GDP is $1.7 billion or something like that. Dominican Republic, $60 billion. Average wage per person in Haiti, $1,700. Average GDP wage in Dominican, $17,000. It's almost always about government. Is government, doing its proper role in protecting the people, or is it a ball and chain? Is it a power struggle that's destroying lives, destroying our freedom? And those are things that we've just got to show. Too many people don't realize it. And again, there's been a few questions here. What about the free money? How do we get people to realize that? Well, we need to talk about Venezuela. It's another great example where they were top in South America. Now they're second from the bottom. Socialism doesn't work. Communism doesn't work. Totalitarianism doesn't work. These are failed systems where tyranny, I want to say, of a minority that has the support of the majority of the people is always the destruction of that nation. And this is the last bastion of freedom, in my opinion. This is the fight of our lives. My great uncles, two of them fought in the war, one in the Navy, one in the Air Force. Luckily, they both came home, but that freedom that we had, we've got to protect it now. And we can do it democratically, or are we going to pull out the crystal meth and become addicted to big government and free handouts taken from someone else and become like Haiti or Venezuela in a destroyed economy. Because that's what happens when government takes over and says we know how to run everything better than private industry or the individual. We've just got to be able to speak passionately about it and factually, because socialism doesn't work. And as it's been said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. And Canada is running out of our money. Online.
Okay, whoa, online question here. I'm going to ask you a question that I don't think you've ever heard before.
Whoa.
So Bob here, and you know Bob, Ottawa is mandating a 30% reduction in nitrogen-based fertilizer for farmers. What are we going to do about it?
Tell Ottawa to reduce theirs, that they'll reduce their food. No, this again is purely an attack, and we've talked about the climate and this idea that CO2 is a toxin. CO2 is not a toxin. Anybody who's been through biology, any farmers, you absolutely know that CO2 is plant food. CO2 is as critical to plant as oxygen is to us. If you go back to the time of the dinosaurs, the oxygen, the CO2 level was believed to be around 2,000 or 3,000 parts per million. We were getting down to the critical point. If you talk to botanists and whatnot, I think at 180 parts per million, all plant life dies, and we die with it. We need that. Fertilizer is one of the great blessings of energy. Again, cheap energy, you get cheap fertilizer, you get cheap production. And the two benefits that we have is with fertilizer and being able to manufacture it out of the petrochemical industry is a great blessing, and we need to protect that. Why would we do that unless we want to destroy people's lives and businesses? We want to increase the cost of basic food. That's just one more reason why Ottawa needs to go. The status quo is unacceptable. That their policies are against humanity. They want to hurt us. Many of those elitists actually say that you and I don't deserve to be on this earth, and that we should be removed because they're the special ones and we're nothing but a toxin to there. But no, Ottawa needs to go. We will protect the fertilizer industry here in Alberta, and we will allow farmers to use the fertilizer, and we'll be creating more water reserves. It's another thing that we lose too much of the water. People say no dams. Oh, we can't afford to do that. We can't afford not to. Climate has changed. 10,000 years ago, we were under 3/4 of a mile to a mile of ice. That has receded all the way back to the few glaciers that we have. And now somehow they think that we are causing that. When you look at the 10,000 years and how that's dried up to one little glacier, and if we're not going to put in more on-stream and off-stream reservoirs to capture that water, it'll be to our detriment. We got to be environmental stewards. We need to look after those things we can, and then we need the fertilizer and the water to produce the bumper crops that we do, and that's what the world wants. Whoever asks me, how do we sell these things? We have great produce here, and we'll continue to have great produce. So I am shocked. I didn't know that Ottawa put that out. I'll do a little research on it.
Paul, I think your words a few minutes ago about this being the fight of our lives and our generation, that is just not an overstatement. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, it falls to us. I've always been proud to call Brooks my home. I've been so impressed with the level of, quite frankly, the common sense in this community. There's a reason why Wild Rose is leading in the polls in Brooks Medicine Hat. Our CA Association is committed to supporting Medicine Hat Cypress and every other CA across the province that will become under the Wild Rose banner. We believe fundamentally this is the right thing to do. This isn't just about you and I. This is about us collectively. This is about those that come next. And quite frankly, as I said at the beginning, I believe and we believe that we have a solemn obligation to leave a better world for those that come next. Please, on your way out the door, we want to thank you first of all for coming tonight and taking your time to spend with us. We're absolutely delighted.
Before they leave, I just want to wrap up 2 minutes, but you go ahead and...
Absolutely. Paul, Rick, Clayton, Sonny, everybody in the room, thank you so much for helping us organize this event. Kieran out in the back. If you're so inclined, we need to build a movement. Paul made the comment about we need to get to 500 members. Once we're at 500, we need to get to 5,000. When we get to 5,000, we need to get to 10,000.
How many have you got now?
We're doing pretty good. What it comes down to is fundraising and membership sales. So we've got a table over there, and if you're so inclined, pick up a membership. They're reasonable. We can get you on the mailing list, and that way you can have communications from the party, from Mr. Hinman. You'll know when there's other events that are happening across the province. This is one of the hardest working men I've ever met. I mean, he's literally accepting invitations nightly from across the province. You're probably miling out a car. I don't know how often.
I just hit 189,000 on the 2017 vehicle, so
yeah.
it's...
It costs a lot of money to run an election, and Brooks Medicine Hat is committed to having somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 in our war chest to be able to run a very credible campaign. We're running to run, or to win, and we're starting that run to the next election. We're starting already. We're in Patricia tomorrow night. Consider yourselves invited. We're at the hotel. We're in Medicine Hat on the 27th. And with that, thank you very, very much for coming out. But Mr. Hinman, the leader of the party's got the hammer. So I leave closing comments with you, Paul.
Thanks, Todd. And I just want to thank each and every one of you. We're the minority right now. You're the canaries in the coal mine. You realize that there's a problem, but you got to start chirping. You got to talk, and I'm going to reiterate what Todd has said. That this is about talking to the people beside us and saying, look, we need to seize this opportunity. We can't let it go by. We can say, oh, the election's a long ways away. It isn't. It'll be upon us in a flash, and it's too late then. We got to prepare now. I really want you to go out and to sell those memberships. How many of you have been to our website, wildrose.party? Okay, it's a good website. I encourage you to go to it. You can donate there. I'm still in my leadership race, and so I'm dependent on the money that I can raise as well. So if you go to paulhinman.com, you can donate there as well. But really appreciate that you are the people that are aware. You understand, and we are the soldiers of freedom. Need you to keep fighting. We need to build our membership, and we need to get the cash so that we can put out the brochures, that we can get the signs up, that we can do more on our website. We got an incredible website. It costs money to develop those things, so it really, the membership and the donation will be what drives us. And it's unbelievable how much support the UCP and the NDP are getting cash-wise. They're raising $5 million plus a year. We just need to raise, I've said it many times, if our members would each donate 50 cents a day for those who can afford it, we would be getting $50,000, $70,000 a month, and we can run our campaign on that. The provincial government, they can't. Jason Kenney, I don't even know if they've paid off their last election yet. Before COVID, they hadn't paid it off. They're desperate to raise money. They're able to squeeze it off because they're in the position of power and make deals. But we need the free thinker, the freedom fighter to step up and join with us. If you donate $200 to the party, that's a $150 tax credit. That means that you're transferring $150 of your $200 of taxes to the Alberta government to the Wild Rose Independence Party. It's $50 out of your pocket. If you can do 50 cents a day, that'll work out to about $180. It'll cost you $45 out of your pocket. And most of us can afford that. We just don't realize it. But I encourage you to understand the tax credits that you get. It's literally a transfer of your taxes from the government to our party. And we need to tell Albertans that, look, this isn't a lot of money out of your pocket. This is $4 a month. That's actual cost, and we can afford it if we understand it. But I can't thank you enough for being here, and I'm looking forward to the next time to being back. Been here several times, and I'm sure Todd and Clayton and others will invite me back, and I'll look forward to seeing each and every one of you again. So thank you very much, and have a good night.
We're going to close out the